blood of the covenant, blood of the covenant, blood of the covenant, which is obviously a reference to circumcision. Right? It clearly is a reference to circumcision. I mean, it actually harkens back to the language that the Bible uses a little bit earlier in Exodus, where it's talking about this bizarre circumstance where Moses is coming out of Midian, and suddenly he's accosted by an angel who says, you didn't do the circumcision on your son, and his wife has to his wife has to do the circumcision. And so the question there is, why doesn't Moses just do the circumcision? Like, people have been doing this for a long time, and the idea is, the tempting idea is that once you've reached a certain spiritual level, you no longer have to reify yourself in the here and now. You no longer have to take the ideal and make it real in your life with the kind of bloody and hard action that it takes to make the ideal real in your life. And so that's what God's reminding Moses there. That's why he's called the bridegroom of blood in that particular section. Same thing here, right? You have Moses, who is taking the blood and putting it in bowls, and then he's sprinkling it all over the people, and he's saying this is a covenant of blood. Right? The idea is that he's essentially circumcising the nation here. He's saying that you have now been, called to instantiate in your own flesh, in all of your decision making, in every area, the reality of the ideals that you have just been given in the law.
So is the use of the blood here something like a reminder, a very concretized reminder to the people that all the steps, even the micro steps they take forward in relationship to this covenant, are essentially going to be sacrificial? Because the idea, of course, would be if you're moving towards an ideal, that takes work. It takes the willingness to sacrifice the impulsivity of the present to the future ideal, the movement towards the promised land, and that every single one of those steps is in some sense sacrificial. And so maybe that's part of the symbolism.
And that sacrifice also makes you into a nation, meaning that it was fascinating. I went to a circumcision. Yeah, I mean, I went to a circumcision ceremony for an ATL baby fairly recently at the synagogue. And the phrase that's used right after you circumcise the baby is that the baby should go on to Torah, to learn Bible, to the chuppah, to get married, and to good deeds, lema'asim tovim, and doing good things. So from the very earliest, the very first thing you do with the baby doesn't have a name, by the way. We don't name male babies in Judaism until the actual circumcision. Once the circumcision happens, you have now been instantiated into the nation, and that comes complete with the commandments that are now incumbent on you immediately. Right? This idea that kids are sort of free-range chickens and you just let them do whatever they're going to do doesn't exist in Judaism, and it doesn't exist in the Bible either. So when the people buy into the idea of a covenant of blood, they're pre-committing. You can try to get away from it, but there's no way to get away from this. You're now part of the covenant, and this is not a breakable covenant. You can't run away from this.
Well, and you surely another precedent too. You have that incident, the bridegroom of blood, but you've also got the covenant with Abraham earlier in Genesis 15. And as I understand it, you Jews could put me right on this, you cut the animals in half, or the birds, and you walk between them as a kind of sign that these which were once united are divided, but you who now make the covenant were once not united, but now you are. And the blood is the life, of course, and it shows you the supreme cost and
by the way, mirrored in the sacrifice, right? He puts half the blood in bowls and half the blood in basins, right? He's dividing just the same way that it was at the
we should also point out to people